Thank you so much, everyone, for taking out time and joining this particular webinar. I welcome everyone. Let's get started. I would like to introduce myself first, and then I will introduce our organization, I2E Consulting. I will then go on and introduce our speakers, and then we'll look at a quick agenda that we've put together for this session, and then we get started with the session. So very quickly, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Vivek Kadam. I have been with I2E Consulting for about 9 years now. I have 14 years of total experience in customer success and sales. I also do account management at I2E Consulting, and I also host the digital events for I2E. That's me. Moving on, let's talk about our organization, I2E Consulting. We are a software services providing company based in the US and in India. We have been in the business since 2010, and ever since we've been working with some really big pharma customers, and pharma industry has always been our focus. We are partners with Planisware, we are partners with Microsoft, AWS, Dataiku, Automation Anywhere, and even Planview now. Our services, they majorly revolve around project and portfolio management, um, data analytics, and we do a lot of work in Office 365 as well. And we've also been helping our customers in their AI journey, AI and ML journey. A lot of work is done in the data visualization space, and where you can see we work with almost all the data visualization tools that are out there, be it Tableau, Spotfire, Power BI, building custom dashboards, and everything. We do it all. So that's about I2E Consulting, the organization. Let's move on and talk about our speakers. So we have Mr. Shashank with us, and Shashank has got huge experience in cybersecurity. He has been leading all the cybersecurity projects in the organization. He's very passionate when it comes to providing solutions to all kinds of problems. With his passion for innovation and problem solving, he drives all the digital transformation projects and cybersecurity projects with utmost quality. Next up, we have is Mr. Prajwal Bhandari. He's also a cybersecurity associate. He's a part of Shashank's team. He has been handling a lot of projects in the cloud security area, and he's an expert when it comes to vulnerability assessment and testing. With focus on endpoint protection and secured access, he's committed to safeguarding the company's digital assets, both for I2E and our customers. Let's very quickly look at the agenda that we have for you today. We're going to talk about the challenges that pharma companies face when it comes to cybersecurity. We're going to talk about AI in pharma. We also will discuss real world cyber attacks, the FDA's cybersecurity modernization plan. Then we have CMAP implementation strategies, followed by best practices and AI security in pharma. And finally, we'll have the Q&A session. Yeah, so that was the agenda. Let's not delay this session any further, and we start the webinar, which is on cybersecurity in pharma. So over to you, Prajwal.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Yeah, welcome you all to this webinar. So let's start with our first agenda item, which will focus on cybersecurity challenges in pharma. See, the pharmaceutical industry is a prime target for all the cyber criminals. Like, given the sensitive data and the high value of intellectual property, it's quite critical, right, to handle pharmaceutical data. From ransomware attacks to data breach, we'll dive into the evolving threat landscape and how pharma organizations are particularly vulnerable in this digital era. So, starting with our cybersecurity challenges in pharma, the first challenge is data integrity. So, we all know how valuable is the data integrity part, right? Coming to the pharmaceutical organization, like maintaining data integrity is quite important and paramount. So, this includes ensuring that clinical trials, research data, manufacturing process, and patient records remain accurate, complete, and unaltered. But why is this so critical? You guys think, right? Why data integrity is that critical in all the organization? Now imagine a scenario where a slight modification in a clinical trial data leads to an inaccurate conclusion, okay, about drug efficacy or safety. It can have a devastating consequences from regulatory penalties to patient harm. So in pharma, the stakes are extremely high when it comes to data tampering. Even if it is unintentional, leads to be a disastrous outcome also. So let's see, there are two types of data integrity challenges, starting with the first, which is accidental alteration. So even a well-meaning employees can by mistakenly or inadequately alter or delete the sensitive information unknowingly, which happens in some of the organizations. The second challenge is cyber attacks. We all know how hackers may modify or corrupt data for financial gain or sabotage it, right? So this can lead to compromise research or production process. Coming to our second challenge, which is insider threat. Now, how many of you think that the biggest threat is from the external hackers, right? You all might be, I mean, most of you might be thinking that the biggest cyber security threat is from the external hackers or the outside attackers, right? Now, let me flip the script. While the external threat is like hackers are the major concern, a surprising amount of risk also comes from insider threats. So people within the organizations are also the insider threats. In pharma, the insiders might have access to critical data, including drug formulations, clinical trial information, and other intellectual properties also. Here, there are two types of insider threats. The first is malicious insiders, where employees or the contractors who intentionally steal or sabotage the sensitive data. For example, there might be an employee who is disgruntled or who is not that loyal to your organization, might leak the proprietary information to the competitors, right? Those are the malicious insiders. Then comes unintentional insiders, where well-meaning and loyal employees who unknowingly expose the company to risk by sharing the sensitive data. Often this happens through bad security practices such as weak passwords or failing for a phishing scam. So these are the types of insider threats. Moving to a third challenge, which is third-party risk. The third-party risk in pharmaceutical industry, collaboration with the third-party vendors is essential, whether it's supplier, clinical research organizations, or cloud service providers. The third party plays a huge role in day-to-day operations. However, these relationships can also introduce significant cybersecurity risk also. Now let's see what makes the third-party risk so critical in pharma. Starting with data sharing, we all know about data sharing, how data is critical and data needs to be shared throughout the organizations, between one organization to other organization, through client to vendors, right? When working with third parties, sensitive data often needs to be shared, including clinical trials result, patient information, and intellectual property when it comes to pharmaceutical industries. If one of these partners has a weak security practice, your data could be exposed. The second challenge is that supply chain attack, where hackers often target vendors as a backdoor, okay, to get into your organization. If the supplier is breached, the attacker might use this access to infiltrate your system also, right? We have been seeing this in these high profile cases like solar wind attack, right? The attacker compromised the solar winds Orion, which is one of the popular network management software organization, to infiltrate multiple organizations which were using this software, including USA government agency and private companies also. So these were the critical third-party challenges in pharma. Moving toward fourth challenge, which is regulatory compliances. See, regulatory compliances can feel overwhelming and difficult to maintain due to several challenges. The main thing is complexity, I can say. So in pharmaceutical industry, the regulatory landscape is complex and constantly evolving. So ensuring compliances with the data protection regulation like HIPAA, might be GDPR, and industry-specific guidelines such as FDA, EMA, which requires no small feat, which are quite complex, I can say. Let's see the key challenges when it comes to compliance part. See, one of the key challenges is data privacy and security. See, regulations like HIPAA, GDPR require strict access control over sensitive data, especially how the patient's data is collected, stored, and processed. Then comes cross-border data transfer. So, pharma companies often operate globally, which means transferring data across the borders and compliances with different international data laws becomes a big challenge. The third key challenge is audit and documentation, where the regulatory bodies may require to audit and ensure compliances, and also the organization needs to maintain the proper documentation of their security control, incident response plan, and data protection, which is quite challenging to maintain and audit all this documentation also. So these were the key four challenges when it comes to cybersecurity challenges when it comes to pharma industry. See, as we have discussed, the pharmaceutical industry faces unique and growing cybersecurity challenges, from maintaining data integrity and managing third-party risk and staying compliant with the evolving regulations, right? The good news is that by proactively addressing these areas which I have mentioned, so you can significantly reduce your risk exposure also. So moving to our next agenda, which is opportunities and risk while using AI in pharma. See, let's dive into how AI is revolutionizing the pharmaceutical industry, which is one of the most crucial sector I can say when it comes to innovation and global health, right? But like any other technological advancement, AI also comes with a use case and its own set of risks. Let's see what are all the opportunities and the use cases when it comes to AI being used in pharmaceutical industry. The drug discovery acceleration. Imagine being able to speed up the drug discovery for years to months. AI is helping pharmaceutical companies to analyze vast data sets to identify potential drug candidates faster than the traditional methods. Here, AI can be useful that it can predict which compounds are most likely to succeed, potentially reducing the research time and also the cost significantly. So there are key tools which are being used by the organizations for drug discovery, like IBM's tool, IBM's Watson. Then we have Atomwise. Then we have Benevolent also. So all of these tools combines AI with biomedical data. So it's quite useful in the drug discovery when it comes to AI. Moving to our next opportunity and a use case of AI, which helps in clinical trial optimization. See, clinical trials often are one of the most expensive and time-consuming drug stage of drug development. Here, AI can optimize this process easily. How? By identifying suitable candidates for trials, predicting patients' response, and also reducing the durations of trials by leveraging the predictive analytics also. So here also there are key tools which are used by the pharmaceutical industry for clinical trial optimization, like Medidata. We have DeepSeek's AI, then we have Antidote. So these tools usually use AI powered platform that matches patients to clinical trial by scanning through the millions of patients profile and available data. So it is quite easy for the clinical trial process also. Moving to our third use case and the opportunity, that is personalized medicine. So here AI enables us to move towards personalized medicine where treatments are tailored to each individual based on their genetics profile, maybe it be lifestyle or the medical history. This means more effective therapies with a fewer side effects by using this personalized medicine. The next comes supply chain management. Here also AI driven analytics are optimizing supply chain management by forecasting the demand, managing the drug inventory, and also reducing the waste. So this is especially critical in times of crisis such as, for example, we had recent COVID-19 pandemic, right, where managing the resource efficiently was a matter of public health, right. So here AI can help in optimizing the supply chain management also. So now let's turn to the other side of the coin also, the risk. I talked about the opportunities. Now let's talk about the risk while using AI in pharma. While AI opens the door for incredible innovations, it also poses significant challenges, especially in terms of security. Okay, the first risk is data breach, which is very common, right? The pharmaceutical companies handle massive amount of data, including patients' record and their proprietary research data also. If these data sets are compromised, it can have serious consequences for privacy and patient trust. See, AI systems, if not properly secured, can become an attractive target for the criminals, right? So data breach is one of the risks I can say. Moving to the next risk, which is algorithm manipulation, which is very common, I guess, when it comes to AI, where AI algorithm can be manipulated or biased, right? For example, attackers could inject malicious data into the training sets to alter the outcome of an AI-driven system. This could lead to a wrong drug also. So it is quite a critical thing. Then moving to a third risk, which is intellectual property theft, which is IP theft. See, AI plays a crucial role in generating intellectual property such as drug formulas and research data also. So this makes pharma companies a prime target when it comes to IP theft, where the data has been stored within the AI and if not properly configured, it can be stolen by the attackers. So this is one of the risk I can say. Then moving to the last risk, which is regulatory non-compliances. So here, AI-driven innovations in pharma must comply with the strict regulatory standards. So basically, pharma industries, if they use AI-driven tools, so they need to strictly follow certain regulatory standards also, such as FDA's guideline. There might be EMA's guideline also, or GDPR in Europe. So failing to comply, this can result fines or halted projects also. The rapid evolution of AI sometimes outspaces regulatory framework also, leading it's one of the challenges I can say, forming one of the risk when it comes to using AI. See, as we know now, we have covered all the opportunities and risk. So we can see AI presents incredible opportunity for the pharmaceutical industry, but we must also be mindful of the risk. So by this agenda, I can say AI in pharma, opportunity and risk. So the key takeaway from this agenda is that innovation and security must go hand in hand. See here, AI can accelerate breakthroughs, right? But we need to put the right safeguard in place to protect the valuable data also, algorithms and intellectual property that drives the future of the pharma. So it's quite important for us. Moving to our next agenda, which is the real world cyber attacks. Okay. So here we are having two examples of real world cyber attacks, which is Merck and XQ Pharma, which are caused a significant impact in the pharmaceutical industry. See, starting with Merck, so in 2017, Merck, which is a global pharmaceutical giant, right? It was hit by a devastating cyber attack known as NotPetya ransomware. So this attack was a part of a large cyber campaign that affected multiple industries across the globe. That's why we have added this. It has caused a significant impact. So this attack took place in June 27, 2017, and the type of attack was ransomware attack named as NotPetya. Let's see how this attackers exploited Merck. It all started with exploitation of one of the Ukrainian software updates. Here, attackers, they just pushed one of their NotPetya malware into MEDOC's system, okay, which is one of the software company, Ukrainian software company, and the software is accounting software, which has been used by most of the organizations. Once this malware, NotPetya malware, was pushed into the MEDOC software account, and they pushed an update, right? So the malware spread rapidly to the organizations that used this accounting software, including Merck also. So Merck also had an office in Ukraine. So once this malware was on Merck's network, it quickly propagated across the global operation because there was a lack of network segmentation in Merck's network. So basically, this ransomware behavior was the attack seems to be aimed as causing a widespread disruption rather than collecting ransom. So basically, ransomware attacks are like getting amount from the organization and giving them a solution to just decrypt this ransomware, right? So here, the main thing is that the people say this it was not a ransomware attack. Why? Because this attack was not having the decryption process only. The attacker just encrypted all the data within the system, but they didn't created any decryption process only. That's why we say that this attack was mainly created to just disrupt all the pharma industries rather than collecting the ransomware payment. So the impact for the Merck was that the attack disrupted Merck's global operation, affecting manufacturing, research, and sales system also. Merck also lost access to their critical data and its ability to manufacture and distribute vaccines and medicines, which was halted for weeks. So this was all about Merck. Moving to the next real world cyber attack, which is XQ Pharma. So in 2020, XQ Pharma, which is a contract research organization that provided clinical trial services to the pharmaceutical industry, it also suffered a data breach. So this breach compromised sensitive data related to clinical trials and other confidential pharmaceutical researches also. So this attack took place in May 2020. So the type of attack was data breach via third party vulnerability. So basically there was a third party risk and the data breach was through third party vendors. So this breach involved a compromise of e-research ERT organization, which provided electronic patient and data solution to XU Pharma basically. So let's see how this attack was taken place. It all started with a phishing campaign. Okay, it was suspected that the attacker used phishing emails to target employees at the ERT organization, allowing them to gain initial access. So once the attacker was inside the system, they exploited the vulnerabilities within the data management software, and also they got into all the other clients, pharma clients, which were using ERT vendors network. So they entered all those systems also, and they exfiltrated all the data to their system. Here, the impact was that all the sensitive clinical trial data and the personal informations were exposed, and attacker moved all the sensitive data to their system. Now, what are the lessons that needs to be learned from this kind of attack, and what are the mistakes that they have made during this attack? The first was business continuity gap. See, Merck faced a significant delay in running or resuming their operations due to this attack, right? Because there was a gap in their disaster recovery process or their business continuity planning also. Okay. Then the second thing is that the third party risk management. As a example for XU Pharma, the XU Pharma used to handle data for pharmaceutical clients also, including clinical trial data. So this breach underscored the importance of third party vendor management also, right? The pharma company should outsource the data handling and operation to the external partner. They do it, right? They do give outsource their data handling and operations to the external partners, but they do not assess the third party, right? So third party assessment is very important when it comes to data trading of data. The third point is lack of data encryption and protection. So although companies claim that they are using data encryption, but the ransomware attack still happens, and somehow the other way the attackers manage to access and expose the sensitive data. It means that the data protection measures that we are taking might be insufficient or improperly implemented sometimes. Yeah, so this was all about the real world cyber attacks. Passing on to you, Shashank.
Thank you so much, Prajwal, for explaining the significant cybersecurity risk which has been faced by pharma companies and demonstrating some real world examples for us. So before I start with my presentation, first I would like to introduce a warm welcome to all the attendees who have joined this session. So we'll be talking about the FDA CMAP implementation for my part. So moving on to FDA CMAP, which stands for Cybersecurity Modernization Action Plan. I'd like to preface by saying that, regulatory requirements recently have been part of, deployment of cybersecurity controls, processes and procedures within the organization. But right now, companies and authorities, especially the regulators, are looking at specific cybersecurity requirements. As an example, in the US, recently authorities have also started to include specific cybersecurity questions, when they're doing inspections or audits at pharma manufacturing sites. So this actually shows us that, the regulators are opening their bounds to cybersecurity risk which the companies are facing, and ensuring that they are taking steps and measures to inculcate this into the practice. Now, what does CMAP stand for? The FDA CMAP, which stands for Cybersecurity Modernization Action Plan, it was a detailed document and a project brief, which was published in November 2022. Basically, this document outlines the agency's strategy to strengthen their entire cybersecurity practice and also mitigate risk to the IT infrastructure as well as sensitive data. Now, why is this plan important? I particularly feel that this plan is very important because there has been a very much increase in cyber attacks targeting the pharma companies worldwide. One recent statistics from one of the analyst reports was that since the pre-pandemic era, cyber incidents against pharma companies have increased by 457%. That's a very alarming statistic. This shows that, pharma companies across the world are under increased risk of cybersecurity threats. So that's why CMAP comes into the picture. The ultimate goal of CMAP is to create a program, basically a best-in-class, intelligence-driven program for cybersecurity. And the crux of this entire CMAP is adoption of a zero trust architecture, which is shorthand for ZTA. Now, what is zero trust architecture? Basically, it's a security model that assumes that no user or devices can be trusted by default, and it will require continuous verification for access. So why is this important? Because this approach actually ensures that we can enhance our security by eliminating any kind of implicit trust. Instead, each and every access request is continuously validated. Now, for CMAP to take place, we have an implementation model in place, and CMAP describes it at 5 primary pillars. The first one being identity, then we have devices, then we have a network environment. The fourth is applications, and the fifth is data. I'll cover in detail like how we can implement our strategy across all of these areas in the next point, which is the key objectives. So there are 3 main key objectives for FDA CMAP implementation. The first one being that the first key point being that we have to modernize the entire cybersecurity infrastructure for all the organizations through a zero trust based approach. So here, when I talked about identity in the previous point, basically we need to implement strong authentication mechanisms across the entire organization. So this will include MFA and other security practices. The second, for devices, we'll be enhancing the device security measure through measures such as, OS hardening, encryption by default, and implementing monitoring system across the entire network. Coming to networks, we will need to modernize the entire network security of an organization through micro-segmentation, implementation of SASE services, where basically, all the internet traffic will be routed through a intermediary, a proxy, and we will be able to analyze all the threats in real time, and also implementation of software-defined networks, which are SDNs. Coming to the application workloads for pharma companies, the first and foremost point which the CMAP specifies is that we should always secure applications with a never trust model. That is the core of zero trust architecture. And we should incorporate DevSecOps practices from the beginning of the projects, even before we start working on it. And finally, for the data part, we have to protect our data both in transit as well as rest. Since the entire pharmaceutical industry deals with a huge amount of data, and we have to transfer it on a daily basis with multiple third-party suppliers in-house as well as with regulatory agencies. So they also recommend us to implement enhanced DLP capabilities, which are data loss prevention capabilities. The second key objective of the CMAP is its alignment with various cybersecurity federal regulations. So previously till now, FDA was never focusing on any federal cybersecurity regulations and was never in sync with them. But with the implementation of the CMAP model, we actually have alignment with two major industry frameworks. The first one being the NIST Zero Trust Architecture, and the second one being the CISA Zero Trust Maturity Model. Both of these are very well respected frameworks within the entire cybersecurity industry. The third key objective of the CMAP is basically to improve the customer experience and increase the overall operational efficiency for the pharmaceutical customers. So, how do we acknowledge this? First, the CMAP document has an entire plan where they acknowledge the impact of cybersecurity measures on the entire customer experience journey and show how it will improve it through the zero trust approach. Now, all of these modernization efforts, which have been mentioned in this plan, will lead to increased performance, reduced latency across the entire networks, and faster access to cloud resources, which will contribute to the overall operational efficiency. Now, we looked at the overview of CMAP. We have discussed the key objectives of it. Now, let's discuss on why FDA CMAP is actually relevant to pharma companies. See, on the outset, it may seem that FDA CMAP just focuses on bolstering the particular agency's own cybersecurity infrastructure, but actually it carries significant implications for the entire industry, especially the pharma companies which are operating within the FDA's regulatory landscape. The first and foremost, which I mentioned previously also, is that the CMAP actually signals the FDA's commitment to a stringent cybersecurity standard, particularly to the adoption of the Zero Trust Architecture, ZTA. So as the FDA enhances its own defenses, it's almost reasonable to expect that they will also have the same expectation for all the pharmaceutical companies to adopt some similar robust cybersecurity practices, especially for the area where data security is concerned. The CMAP also emphasizes the importance of a secure data exchange and collaboration platform, both within the FDA network and with external partners, which is including all the pharmaceutical companies. The pharma companies will need to adapt their systems and protocols to align with these security standards and facilitate smoother interactions with the FDA. The other relevant point is that CMAP actually educates for software assurance best practices throughout the software development lifecycle, that is SDLC. This is the first time when this has been mentioned in any of the FDA documents. And I personally feel that it is particularly relevant for the pharma companies which are developing software for medical devices, that is SAMD, or they are using software in clinical trials as well as data analysis. Adhering to all these best practices will be crucial for ensuring the security and integrity of these software systems, which have a direct impact on patient safety as well as regulatory compliance. And the final key point on why CMAP is relevant is basically the influence that it holds on the industry standards. As we all are aware, the FDA is a leading pharma regulatory authority. It often sets the benchmark for industry standards, and all the other regulatory bodies follow that. So the CMAP's focus on advanced cybersecurity measures like zero trust, AI/ML for threat detection, and continuous monitoring will obviously influence the adoption of similar practices within the entire pharmaceutical sector. So that's why pharma companies will need to proactively invest in upgrading their cybersecurity infrastructure and expertise in-house to stay ahead of these evolving standards and also maintain their compliance with FDA regulations. So if I want to conclude, I will say that even though FDA's CMAP program on the outset will look like internally focused, it actually has far-reaching implications for the entire pharmaceutical industry. By understanding what are the guidelines outlined in that, we can actually proactively adapt our systems, processes, and our expertise to ensure compliance and contribute to a robust healthcare ecosystem. So this was about the FDA CMAP program. Now, in the next agenda, we'll discuss about what are the implementation strategies for CMAP. So as you can see in the slide, there are basically 6 implementation strategies for CMAP, and I'll talk about all of these in detail. The first and the foremost is risk assessment. Now, risk assessment is a very crucial component of CMAP because it actually involves a systematic process to identify any potential vulnerabilities and threats to IT as well as OT systems in pharma companies. So what does this process involve? The first is threat identification. So we'll have to devise a plan where we identify potential attackers, their motivations, and the techniques that they employ. So in cybersecurity terminology, we call it as TTP, that is tactics, techniques, and procedures. And this is usually carried out by the red team within an organization. Once we have done a threat identification, we'll need to do a vulnerability assessment to actually identify the weaknesses in all the systems, networks, and applications that could be potentially exploited by attackers. Once we have done that, the third point will be a risk analysis, where we evaluate the actual likelihood and the impact of various security risks to prioritize our mitigation efforts across the organization. Once the analysis is done, the final step will involve around risk mitigation, where we will have to develop strategies to identify and address any identified risk, such as implementing security controls, patching any vulnerabilities which are unknown, and also improving employee training. So that was the first part where we do a risk assessment. The second point comes for incident response, that is IR plan. Now, well-defined IR plan is very essential for minimizing any cause of damage which is caused by cyber attacks. And a typical and an effective incident response plan should actually include the following components. The first one would be detection, where we implement any monitoring tools and procedures to detect security incidents in a timely manner. Post that, we should isolate any compromised systems to prevent further damage and data loss. Once we have done that, there should be a process of eradication, where we remove any root cause of the incident and restore the systems to a secure state as it was previously. This also involves a recovery stage, where we restore all the systems to their normal operations and functions as intended. And post that, the final step of a effective IR plan will involve analyzing the entire incident to identify any weaknesses in the security posture and implement corrective measures. So this will be the post-incident analysis. Once we have done the incident response, we come to the zero trust architecture, that is ZTA. So in basic terminology, a zero trust architecture, that is ZTA, actually shifts the entire security paradigm from a perimeter-based protection model to one that assumes that all network traffic is entrusted. So in the ZTA model, the network traffic, be it from within the network or outside the network, is assumed that is untrustable. So for implementing a ZTA model, first what we need to do is divide the entire network into smaller isolated segments to limit any spread of malware or cyber attacks. Once we have done that, there should be a process for continuous authentication as well as authorization, where we will require our users to authenticate and authorize access to resources at every interaction which they have with the system. Following that, we need to grant users only the minimum privileges which are necessary to perform their job functions. So this comes under the purview of least privilege access. And we should always protect data wherever it resides, regardless of its location, be it on premises or on the cloud. So data security is very paramount in this. Once we're done with the zero trust architecture, we move on to security awareness. Nowadays, there are a lot of employees who are coming under direct attacks from phishing as well as other methods of cyber attacks. So in today's day and age, security awareness training is very essential for educating our employees about cybersecurity threats and the best practices. So a very effective training program should at the bare minimum should include a phishing simulation, and that too on a periodic basis, where we test our employees' ability to identify and report any kind of phishing attempts. We also educate the employees and other users about common social engineering tactics and how to avoid falling victim to them. So this should be conducted by the cybersecurity team. Following that, there should be a strong emphasis on password practices, such as using complex passwords, mandatory use of a password manager, and enabling multi-factor authentication, that is MFA, across all services, and especially with the UB key. And the final part will be data privacy, where we'll emphasize the importance of protecting sensitive data and the complying with various privacy regulations. Once we're done with that, the next step of the process or the implementation will rest on the governance framework. So a robust governance framework in CMAP actually provides the necessary oversight and accountability to the board to ensure an effective cybersecurity management. So what are the key components of it? The first part is that we have to develop clear policies and procedures for cybersecurity management across the organization. All the team members need to be assigned clear roles and responsibilities who are responsible for maintaining cybersecurity in the organization. We need to implement a risk management framework to identify, assess, and mitigate any types of risk, while ensuring that we are compliant with all the relevant cybersecurity regulations and standards. And the final part is on continuous improvement. As we are all aware, continuous improvement is essential for staying ahead of any kind of emerging threats and ensuring the effectiveness of any cybersecurity measure that has been implemented. So what do we need to do in this step? First is we need to conduct periodic reviews of the cybersecurity posture and identify any areas of improvement. Then we need to identify and analyze security incidents, be it very small, to identify any kind of weakness and implement corrective measures for them. The team should also be adept at adopting new technologies and best practices as they become available. And finally, the organization should collaborate with external parties to share information and best practices. So this can be done under purview of a industry-wide organization. Now that we discussed about the CMAP implementation strategies, let's have a look at the next agenda, which is the best practices to be followed for implementing AI security in pharma. So here there are 4 main steps. So before I go into that, what I'd like to preface is that currently the speed and accuracy of drug discovery and development is being completely transformed by AI and ML models, which are being used across in the pharma industry, which means that AI security is very paramount for the entire industry. The first part of this pipeline comes in securing the data. Hence, we call it a secure data pipeline. As we know, the data is the foundation of all AI systems, and ensuring its security is paramount in the pharmaceutical industry. Secure data pipelines are crucial to protect sensitive patient data and prevent any kind of unauthorized access. So how do we implement this? The first part is implementation of strong encryption algorithms to protect the data both at rest and as well as in transit. Then restricting access to data based on the roles and responsibilities for the team members who are involved in using that data. Removing or masking any personally identifiable information, PII, to minimize risk. So this can be done along with the help of data anonymization. The fourth step would be tracking the movement and transformation of data throughout the entire pipeline to identify any potential vulnerabilities. We do have multiple solutions in the industry right now, which helps us to manage this entire data lineage practice. And the final point would be, we need to conduct regular audits to assess data security practices and monitor for any anomalies within the pipeline. Once we are done with the secure data pipeline, next we move on to model validation. Now, validating AI models is essential to ensure their accuracy, fairness, and reliability. These 3 points are very crucial. So the first point that we do is we need to ensure that the quality and representativeness of the source data, that is the training data, is proper. Once we have done that, we have to do a model evaluation, where we use appropriate metrics to evaluate the model performance based on the relevant task that is assigned to it. Once we have done that, we should have a proper process in place to identify and address biases in the model's output. No AI algorithm is correct in the first try, right? We need to consistently train it and tweak its output. Once we do that, we have to understand how the model arrives at its decision to ensure transparency as well as accountability. This follows under the domain of explainable AI, which I'll cover in detail in the next point. And the final would be testing the model against adversarial attacks. So this follows under the domain of red team testing, that is VAPT. Now coming to explainable AI, this is a recent terminology which has come in the industry because many users of AI system actually view the entire technology as a black box where we give some question and then we get an answer or a solution, but we don't know how it works internally. To instill a greater sense of confidence in all the outputs that these models actually deliver, we need to provide additional context around these decision-making processes, especially in a regulated industry like pharmaceutical. So here is where explainable AI, XAI, comes into the picture. It is very crucial for understanding how AI models make their decisions, especially in critical applications like drug discovery as well as patient care. So what are the benefits of XAI? The first and foremost is transparency. XAI actually helps us to understand the factors that influence the AI model's decisions. So these can be the strengths and limitations of the data sets that have been utilized, the specific purpose of the model utilized, constraints which have been placed on the model, any assumptions which are inherent in the model, as well as validation processes that the team may have undertaken. Once we are done with that, we can actually ensure compliance with the regulations like GDPR, which require transparency in the entire AI decision-making chain. XAI also helps us to identify and correct errors in the model's logic, and it helps us to address any ethical concerns relating to the AI decision-making, since we can actually trace back the specific decisions which were undertaken by the AI model. And the last part, the best practice for AI security, is access control. Access control is essential to prevent any kind of unauthorized access to sensitive data, the training data, or the AI systems. So what are the key considerations in that? The first one is that we should grant access to users only based on their role or function. This falls under the purview of RBAC, which is role-based access control. Following that, we should grant all the users only the minimum privileges which are necessary to perform their task. This comes under the purview of least privilege principle. Then we should have mandatory multi-factor authentication for all users so that we can identify their access to the systems. The team should also enforce regular password changes to prevent any kind of unauthorized access, and there should be a system in place to track user activity to identify suspicious behavior. By implementing all of these best practices, pharma companies can significantly enhance the security and reliability of the AI systems, protect sensitive data, and also ensure ethical and responsible AI development. So now that we're done with the best practices, let me quickly recap all that we have covered in this webinar till now. So the next agenda item would be the recap. So let me preface by saying and mentioning what Prajwal, to add on to Prajwal's points, what is the importance of cybersecurity? See, our entire industry, the pharmaceutical industry, has a heavy reliance on sensitive patient data. We have complex supply chains in place and also critical infrastructure. So this makes it a prime target for all types of cyber attacks. Hence, organizations need to have a strong cybersecurity posture to protect patient safety, maintain the operational continuity, and also comply with regulatory requirements. Because we have seen that cyber attacks can disrupt the critical operations, leading to delays in drug development, manufacturing, as well as distribution. Pharmaceutical companies must also comply with various regulations, including HIPAA, GDPR, and FDA regulations, which have strict cybersecurity requirements. And last but not the least, any kind of data breach or a cyber attack can significantly damage a company's reputation and erode the public trust in them. So that was why cybersecurity is very important in the pharmaceutical industry. Now coming to FDA's CMAP and why it's relevant to pharma. I personally believe that the CMAP is a comprehensive initiative which is aimed at protecting sensitive data. And why it's important is because it is the first document which is in alignment with the regulatory expectations. It also strengthens the FDA's cybersecurity, which in turn helps us to manage the supply chain disruptions and data breaches that could impact pharmaceutical corporations. And CMAP also fosters collaboration between the FDA and industry stakeholders, enabling information sharing and joint efforts to address any kind of cybersecurity challenges. So, what are the best practices in cybersecurity for pharma companies? The first and foremost is conduct regular risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities and prioritize mitigation efforts across the industry. The second one is developing and regularly testing incident response plan, that is IR plans, to effectively handle cyber attacks. We should implement strong access control to restrict access to sensitive data and systems. We should have data security to protect patient data using encryption, data anonymization, and secure data storage practices. The supply chain security is important. Hence, we should ensure the security of all our third-party suppliers as well as vendors. And the team should stay up to date with all the relevant cybersecurity regulations and ensure compliance. Which brings me to the final point, that is the continuous improvement. Cybersecurity is an ongoing process that requires continuous improvement from both the industry as well as the regulators. So what should we do in this case? The first and foremost is we should always keep all our software systems, be it in the OT or the IT systems, up to date with the latest security patches installed on them. There should be a provision to implement robust monitoring and logging systems to detect and respond to any kind of threats. The security teams should particularly analyze security incidents to identify the root causes and implement corrective measures. We should also stay informed about emerging cybersecurity technologies and consider adopting them as appropriate wherever needed by the industry. And finally is the collaboration piece, where all the companies should collaborate with other industry stakeholders and share their best practices. By prioritizing this cybersecurity, pharmaceutical companies can actually protect their valuable assets, maintain the trust in the industry, and also comply with regulatory requirements. So that brings us to end of this session. So we have opened the chair to Q&A. So let me just read it once more.
So as
As pharma
pharma
companies,
companies expand
Mhm.
digital solutions like IoT and AI, how are they
Mhm.
addressing new cybersecurity threats related to these technologies?
Okay. So I think the first point would be like we are implementing or pharmaceutical companies are implementing several key strategies to deal with it, and most of it relies around ZTA, that is zero trust architecture. The first would be network segmentation. So pharma companies are increasingly isolating their IoT devices and their AI systems on separate segmented networks, that is micro segmentation, to limit any spread of potential attacks. Then they are adopting zero trust architecture to ensure that every device, user, and system within the network as well as outside the network is continuously verified before getting any access to sensitive data or systems. Then I can talk about like, data, especially sensitive patient data or any clinical trial data is being increasingly encrypted at all these stages, both in transit as well as rest, to prevent unauthorized access. Then many companies are also using AI-driven cybersecurity solutions to detect anomalies and potential threats in real time, which actually helps to give faster responses to breach. And with the increased use of third-party AI and IoT solutions, I think regular risk assessment and audits of external vendors are performed to ensure that they meet the security standards. I
Great.
hope that answers the question. Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of questions. The next one I have here is how did ransomware attacks like WannaCry and NotPetya impact pharmaceutical companies, and what key lessons were learned from these incidents?
Okay, let me take this. So talking about ransomware attacks like WannaCry and NotPetya, so they had a significant impact on the pharmaceutical industry, as I explained in my one of the agendas, real world cyber attacks. See, the impact of this ransomware attack was basically it spread globally and paralyzed a lot of companies in the several sectors, including healthcare. While pharmaceutical companies were not that heavily hit, but healthcare was hit more than that. So the lessons that may be learned from this attack can be like a patch management. One of the malwares where which was spread via third party attack, right, through a software. So patch management, I can say it is very essential to be done. Like both the attacks exploited through one of the known vulnerability within the systems, right? Then comes network segmentation, like in Merck's case, where they have not segmented their network, like all the critical systems were within the same network, right? So the critical systems should be isolated from the actual corporate network. So that is one of the lessons I can say, which is very useful, network segmentation. Then comes backup and recovery plan. See, the attacks highlighted the need of robust backup and disaster recovery plans. So wherever there are proper disaster recovery plans and robust backup, I can say the most of the cyber attacks fail over there. Okay. Then comes global chain risk, where these attacks also exploited the vulnerability in the pharmaceutical chain, but just ensuring that all the plans are proper and intact, and also taking the proper measures where companies know how they need to secure every link in their supply chain, including third party vendors also. I guess that may help when it comes to learning the lessons from these kind of attacks.
Well, next one is, this is for Prajwal specifically.
Okay.
Suppose I'm working with a pharma organization regarding some IT service or product. How
Mhm.
can I access their sensitive data securely from their end to my end?
Okay. So there might be a lot of methods that an organization can use, like from pharmaceutical industries to IT services organization. But there are two of the best approaches, I can say. The first approach is end-to-end encryption using SFTP and or VPN. See, SFTP is one of the common file transferring system, right, which is known as secure file transferring. So it can be one of the methods, and using VPN also can create a secure encryption, I can say. It is also one of the important and secure method, I can say, we using VPN. So other best two options are that if the client and the vendor both are using the same cloud platforms, then I guess Azure's OneDrive business can be helpful, because they by default provide end-to-end encryption, and also they provide a encryption at rest also. And also if they are using AWS, then AWS S3 with the client-side encryption, I guess it would be a best example. And also adding something to that, I can say the MFA and RBAC, where role-based access and multi-factor authentication will significantly reduce the risk of insider threat also and unauthorized access also. So these are the common methods, I can say, where using SFTP VPN, or if you're going with a cloud-based technology, then Azure's OneDrive business or AWS S3 storage can help to transfer the data from client to vendor.
Okay. Next question that I have here is what to do when an organization goes through a data breach and the data is over the internet or dark web? How do we handle this?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll take that question, Prajwal.
Yeah. Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah. So that's an interesting question. What happens when the data is over the internet or the dark web, as an example. So whenever a data breach occurs, and suppose we come under the impression that our data is found on the dark web, as an example. So the first and foremost thing that we need to do is immediately isolate, any affected system to prevent any further data loss. Accessing the damage, second point would be like identifying the scope of the breach, what data has actually been compromised, and see, if you can tie it back to how it occurred in the first place. Once we have a note of all this data, the next point becomes that we have to, notify the impacted individuals if they are involved in the data breach, as well as all the relevant regulatory bodies. So we do have specific time frames depending on the type of data that we are actually dealing with. Once the impact, the notification is done, there should be a thorough investigation to understand the entire breach and its root cause. So how can we do that? We can actually utilize some third-party dark web monitoring tools specifically. Some of them which come to my mind are Dark Owl and Identity Guard. So they actually what they do, they actually connect or contact to platforms, dark web platforms, that is onion platforms, and ask them to remove all of the stolen information. Once we have done and taken a kind of a hit on our data, then we have to implement mitigation to ensure that this does not take place. So to prevent any future breaches, the first point would be patching any vulnerabilities, which is a part of the asset management which we talked about earlier, and also implementing some tools to enhance the monitoring processes which are there. So actually these actions will help us mitigate any kind of damage.
Perfect. So I see one here. It's what are the software that I can install to know if there is data breach in the organization?
Okay. So the first one would be like when we are talking about network monitoring solutions. So just to give you an example, suppose there is a SASE solution or a CASB solution which has been implemented in the organization. What they do is they route all the data of the company through a third party proxy service, that is their data centers, and vet all the traffic that is going through it. So this is a part of a zero trust approach, ZTA, that we implement. So through that we can actually get to know, like, is our confidential data actually being transmitted over the internet. Coming to the software solutions that we used on premise, the first one would be the point of contact, where we actually move the data from internal to external environments, that is the firewall. So we should have next generation firewall in place which has AI ML remediations which can help us understand the data breach that is being occurred, or at least notify us about it. And coming to the dark web and other types of monitoring, nowadays, if you're using Office 365 and we are using identity management and protection in that through Entra ID, then we already have a report in place which shows us, like what are the capabilities and what are the avenues through which our data could have been breached within the organization. So we have to use this couple of solutions together, and then so there is no one dashboard which can fulfill all our requirements. So based on the organization's priorities and also the data that we're dealing with, the sensitivity of it, we'll have to use a couple of third party solutions for it.
How do you do third party security assessments?
So when we talk about third party, basically I assume that this is for TPRM. So for TPRM, basically, there will be multiple layers of due diligence, from the contractual security requirements that you have in place to, the technical know-how that we'll need to do. So first will be, evaluating the security practices of the third party vendors internally. What are the policies, frameworks, and compliance regulations that they're following, and also doing an ongoing monitoring. So there should be a follow up, like every 3 months we collect data from their side and review it. So for this, actually, you will need a in person or a team which handles all of this GRC, that is governance, risk, and compliance. So what I would suggest is let's have a combination of questionnaire reviews from the third party vendor, do a couple of on-site audits, and also when penetration testing, that is VAPT, to ensure that the vendor is up to the security standards that is followed by your organization, particularly if you are handing over any sensitive or confidential data to them. So that's very important in this case.
Yeah, adding to that, Shashank,
Yeah.
see this third party, most of the pharmaceutical industries are mostly affected by third party risk only, right? We have seen a lot of
Yes.
organization, and not only the
Mhm.
pharmaceutical organ, but other organizations also. Those have affected, or cyber attacks have been done through this third party risk only. So what I say, we all do this NDAs and SLAs, right? Where we also have a DPA, where a data process agreement is there, where they inline that whether the data is how the data is stored, how the data is processed. Then we check for the
Secured and processed.
policies. Yeah, then we check for
Hmm.
the vendors policies and certifications, whether they have ISO 27001, or else they have this SOC certification also, right? But
SOC 2, yeah.
what I would suggest that checking for all these agreements and checking for all the certifications, also there should be a physical audit also. I said there should be a physical audit where we can check that whether all these policies or the certifications which a vendor is showing is properly actually inline and working or not, right? So that should be
Yeah.
one of the add-ons I can say when it comes to third-party security assessment.
Well, I think there was one that I missed. It said, how does cybersecurity impact the drug development life cycle, and what are the key points of vulnerability during this process?
Okay, let me take this. See, when it comes to the drug development cycle, the pharma companies handle a vast amount of sensitive data, and obviously there will be a lot of impact when the cybersecurity gets in place, right? See, like for example, if there is any R&D process, and I will talking about key point vulnerability right now. See, if there is research and development part, okay, so there might be a theft intellectual property related to drug formulas and compounds, right? So keeping an EDR solution in place might be a good impact, I can say. Then one of the key point vulnerability, I can say clinical trials. See, exposures of patient data and manipulation of the trial results, right? It can be exposed. So here, how the cybersecurity will be impacting is that if the encryption is properly in place, right? So there will be no data exposure, right? Then it comes to supply chain, where tampering with the raw material or disrupting the production or introducing counterfeit drugs also. So this is also one of the vulnerabilities, right? But when the cybersecurity gets in the place, I say a proper access control might help in defending this kind of vulnerability. Then comes regulatory submissions, where cyber attacks during regulatory data submissions could compromise approval process. Yes. So for this process, I can say regular regulatory compliances, if they are properly in place, intact, I guess these vulnerabilities won't be able to harm these organizations. Then comes one of the key vulnerabilities, I can say manufacturing. If the industrial control systems are vulnerable to cyber attacks, then impacting drug production might, then organization might face a lot of problems during this drug production. So here cybersecurity will impact as if there are proper vulnerability patching, if there are proper process where on monthly basis, if I'm checking all these systems whether they are properly patched and doing a proper vulnerable assessment and the penetration testing within the organization, I guess these kind of vulnerabilities might be mitigated, and a cybersecurity within pharma, it will be a huge impact within drug development cycle, I can say.
All right.
Yes,
Thank you so
Vivek.
much, Prajwal. I don't see any questions here. I would like to thank everyone for taking out time once again and joining this session. This was a very informative session, and I hope you got all your answers. I would also like to tell you that we do host webinars every month, and all those webinars are recorded. So is this one. Also, subscribe to our newsletters for all the upcoming events and technical news trends that we share. You can follow us on LinkedIn and even on Instagram. So it was a great session. Thank you so much, Shashank. Thank you so much, Prajwal. And I hope to host more such events with you in the future. Thank you once again, everyone. You know, based on wherever you are, have a great day, have a great evening. See you in the future events. This is Vivek signing off. Thank you so much.